Hey guys, I'm the Drink Pro, and today I'm drinking Peerless Small Batch Bourbon. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'm the Drink Pro. I've got a wonderful bourbon for us to sample today, the Peerless. Now this is a 4-year aged barrel strength bourbon. Unfortunately, I don't have the details on this particular sample. Shout out Ken. I don't actually know how to say Ken's last name, so I'll put it right here. But shout out to Ken for this sample, and shout out to Nate Cooper for getting the sample to me. Kind of went on a little journey, this whiskey did. It's really kind of fun because Peerless is a brand that's existed for a long time. I believe it was 1889 when it was founded by a pharmacist. And they made bourbon for a short while, but for over 100 years they quit making it. And very recently it was revived by the great-great-grandson of the initial founder of Peerless, restarted the distillery's bourbon production. And they're really trying to do things the right way, which I like. They want to release things at batch proof. They want to put 4 years of age on the whiskey. I really commend them for taking those kinds of steps. That is how I believe whiskey should be done. A lot of companies you'll see rush to market with inferior products, and I think that's a real bad idea. You don't have to have a bunch of age on the product. I've had some wonderful 2, 1.5 even year whiskeys, but it still does taste like new make when you do that kind of thing. I really like the fact that they really waited until it was going to taste like bourbon. You put 4 years of age on it, it's going to taste like bourbon. And you keep it at barrel strength, which allows the individual to decide how strong to make it. You know, people often talk about Wild Turkey 101 or Weller Antique 107. You know, those numbers are really common in the back of people's minds, and I think they often assume that's like a weird but deliberate choice. In fact, those used to be entry proofs for barrels. So the barrel proof whiskey you're going to get from something like this is a fun exercise in figuring out what proof you like your whiskey at. One other thing that's worth noting about the Peerless bourbon is that it's a sweet mash. Now, I haven't talked a lot about sweet versus sour mash in my videos, but it's an important distinction to realize when you're thinking about what kind of taste you're going to get from a whiskey. A sour mash essentially allows you to keep very consistent flavors throughout your batches. When you make a sour mash, you use some of the spent fermented grain in each new batch of the process, and you keep a starter with you at all times. What this does is it builds some consistency in the bacteria and the ecosystems that are going into your whiskeys. The sweet mash process doesn't have that benefit that the sour mash does, so consistency is much harder to keep. You have to keep an extremely clean distilling area to get consistent flavors. But another one of the benefits is that you can distill a lot lower proofs and get really interesting flavors with a sweet mash. And that's one of the benefits of doing that process, is you can have relatively low barrel proof whiskeys and still have them in the range of where you want them. I don't think these barrel proofs are coming up at the 120, 130 range like a lot of other barrel proof products. These are coming in more 108, 19, 1010. And because of their proof and their lack of adding water, there's no chill filtering done in this either. So they're really doing a lot of work to make sure the whiskey is being made correctly. Let's see how it affects the flavor. Oh, really interesting, the smell on this. I just talked so much about how Peerless is using sweet mash and not sour mash, but it really does have a sour note on the nose of this whiskey. There's a definite clear vanilla note. There's some very light maple syrup and light honey, but the vanilla is the most prominent note. I don't get much grain on this, which is weird. I usually expect these younger whiskeys to have more grain qualities, either a rye spice or more typically a dusty corn note or even a malty sweetness, but the sweetness on this is very distinctly in the maple syrup honey category with this vanilla quality. I'm not getting any berries on this, maybe a very slight citrus note, like a lemon zest. Might get a little bit of peach as well. There's a very gentle herbal quality, but it's very, very subtle. It's very much in the background. The classic vanilla sweetness is a predominant, overpowering note. I'm digging to find other things, but it's relatively monotone, at least in the main smell region. So let's go ahead and give this a taste. So I'll be quite frank, I'm having this whiskey after a couple of really heavy hitter pours that are some of the best whiskeys in the world. I didn't give this Peerless much of a chance to succeed. I'm getting a lot of that new make flavor on the palate right away. And then after I go back to smell it, after tasting it, I'm smelling corn. Dusty corn. The corn is becoming really prominent. So that 4 years in the barrel compared to these older 12, 15, 20 year pours, it's starting to show its age, its youth on the nose and in the palate. There's a ton of that corn sweetness. There's a little bit of like grain, malty sweetness as well. But I'm also getting a floral note on this one. There's this nice, gentle floral quality. A lot of younger distillate has this real sharpness on the palate. I'm not picking that up on the Peerless. 4 years is a significant amount of time in a barrel. That is what a bottled and bond is going to get you. And although they don't have the 9, 12, 15-story rick houses or whatever, they're still putting 4 years of age on it, so you're still getting a lot of those qualities from the barrels. It's sort of like in Scotch when you see a 10, 12-year age statement, they're going to bring in older whiskeys too for consistency. Because Peerless is so new, they're putting a 4-year age on this, but they're not going to be blending it with 12, 15, 20-year whiskeys. They're putting their own distillate in this. So you have to take it with a grain of salt that it's going to have some of that youth, whereas your bigger brands or your more established brands are able to blend that out. As I become accustomed to the corn and the sweetness of the grains, I'm starting to pull out some of those woody notes on the finish. I'm getting this wonderful light pepper, maybe like a white pepper, on my tongue in the mid-palate and the finish. This wonderful sweet floral, maybe even slightly fruity mid-palate is really starting to show up more and more. It's a really good pour. It's just not well-defined enough yet. I think Peerless needs more age, or they need a more definite, clear profile they're shooting for. I'm not sure if this is a single barrel product or not, come to think of it, but this tastes like something that was blended to taste good, but not blended with a specific vision. I would like to see Peerless get a little bit more targeted and work towards specific flavors, and maybe even bring in some older product on their 4-year stated whiskeys so that you can get a really interesting expression of their whiskey. The 4-year is great, don't get me wrong, but it's just not quite hitting all the notes I want it to. Especially considering how expensive these bourbons tend to be, Peerless whiskeys are almost always over $70 or $80. It's hard for me to recommend this bottle at that kind of price point, because right now it feels like a whiskey being pulled in different directions. I get this herbal note, I get this floral note, I get this really sweet note on the nose and the front of the palate, and then this hint of wood in the back. A lot of times I like that because it's a journey, but these are not cohesive units in this case. They're all very separate, isolated flavor incidents, and I'd like to see them fit all together, and that's a blending issue as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully Peerless will heed my advice. Hopefully they'll watch this video. I don't think they will, but I'd love to believe. You gotta have self-confidence. That's why I'm doing this shit anyway, right? If you're able, I'd love it if you could join the Patreon. It starts at just $3 a month. You can just basically buy me a drink once a month. It's all you're doing. And you'll get extra added content. You'll get early access to these reviews at certain tiers. You can get a lot of cool stuff. It's not just a donation. It's helping support this show, and you're getting something in return. So thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to go drink the rest of this Peerless. Oh, I might have finished it. Well, I might have to get myself a second pour of this Peerless. And you all keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.